Love finds its way back. Chapter 1. Alcaraz Disruption. Alcaraz, a name synonymous with control, power, and old money. That was the burden she carried. No matter where she went, it followed her like a leech clinging to blood. Alcaraz Holdings had been in power and operation since her great-grandfather founded the company, trampling over the poor and defenseless to reach the top. Nevestri had been groomed to take over the empire, and she despised it. She wanted to run for the hills, find a dark cave, and disappear into it. Instead, she stood in the boardroom of Alcaraz Holdings, waiting for her father to hand over the reins, waiting to become a puppet of the name and its power. Nevestri Alcaraz, 31, single not by choice and utterly lonely, was a beautiful woman. Her tall, slender frame was fitted into a charcoal-gray business suit that clung to her body as if it wanted to melt into her. Long black hair fell in soft curls down her back, framing a face that would make any sculptor jealous, carved with the perfection of Spanish and English blood. Her deep hazel eyes, dark like pools of still water, were focused on the papers spread across the obsidian boardroom table. Her lips were full, slightly parted, giving the illusion of sensuality and unspoken promise. She picked up the pen and looked over the 12 ancient men seated around the table. Then her gaze flicked to her father once, briefly. Antonio Alcaraz was in his late 60s, white-gray hair and deep-set wrinkles marking his face. His lips were pulled tight, his dark eyes fixed on her with something that might have been mistaken for pride, but she knew better. Nevestri held the pen in her hand for a long moment. The weight of it felt like a mountain. Perhaps it was. Once she signed, she would be tied to Alcaraz Holdings for life. She inhaled deeply and dropped the pen onto the desk, watching it roll across the obsidian surface before stopping short of Antonio. Silence fell over the room. 12 men waited. In that stillness, she heard her grandmother's voice. "You're the first woman in the Alcaraz lineage to take over. Do the right thing." She had tried to ask what that meant. She had tried to understand. But later that year, her grandmother passed away, leaving behind only a small wooden box. She had not opened it until last night. Sabriana Alcaraz had never agreed with the history of her father or her grandfather. She had tried to shield Nevestri from it. She had one brother, and he had run the company until his death, handing the reins to Antonio. Inside the wooden box were a letter and several documents. The letter was written in her grandmother's elegant hand, a plea and a prayer. "My Nafi, when you read this letter, I am finally free of the burden of being an Alcaraz. I need you to know what you are stepping into. Alcaraz Holdings has never cared for the hard-working class who built its power and control. In the attached documents are the names of every person wronged while this company was built. Fix it. I ask, no, I plead with you, when you take over, do not follow in the footsteps of the tyranny that ruled the Alcaraz familia. Also in the box is a shareholder's certificate. One your father does not know about, or perhaps knows about and chooses to ignore. I am the majority shareholder. I own 61% of Alcaraz Holdings. A codicil allowed your father to run the company as he saw fit, but upon my death, those shares transfer to my only grandchild, you. He will try to bully you. He may try to fight this. But by the time he realizes, the shares will already be yours. You are now the majority shareholder. My 61%. And when your father steps down, he must give you an additional 5%, as per the age-old agreement of the Alcaraz family. Do the right thing. Bring this company into the 21st century. Look after the people who put us in power, the people who gave up their lives so we could become monsters. With all my love, Grandmother Sabi." Nevestri had read the letter 20 times, just to be sure. 66%. She now owned 66% of Alcaraz Holdings. She no longer needed her father or the board to make a single decision. Chapter 2. The Storm Called Nafi. Nevestri walked to the wall-to-ceiling windows overlooking Valencia, Spain. The air was cool, the city spread out below her in orderly chaos. Down there were millions of people who relied on the strength and the righteousness of the decisions they hoped would come from Alcaraz Holdings. She folded her arms over her chest and inhaled deeply. Then she heard her father's voice behind her. Nevestri, we are waiting. No please. No thank you. No ever. Those were beneath Antonio Alcaraz. She felt the unease settle in the room. Then she exhaled and turned. She stepped to the chair at the head of the table and pulled a document from her briefcase. Moving deliberately, she stepped around to her father's chair, picked up the pen, and returned to the paper on the desk. With a stern, steady hand, she signed, but did not slide the document back to him. She picked up the second document. Her voice, when she spoke, was crisp and clear. As of this moment, I, Nevestri Sabriana Alcaraz, am the majority shareholder. I own 66% of this company. There will be significant changes in the near future. The temperature in the room dropped to something below frozen. Gasps rippled through the space, loud enough to sting her ears. Her father's face shifted from shock to anger, and then to something she had not seen since she was a child. She watched the tremor in his hands as he sank into his chair, as if in slow motion. She straightened her back and continued. This is a copy of my grandmother's will and shareholder certificate. The originals are in a safe place. She picked up her phone and dialed her assistant. Minutes later, an elderly woman entered carrying a stack of folders and handed them to Nevestri before stepping back to stand quietly behind her. Nevestri took the papers, her expression unreadable, and walked to each board member, placing a folder in front of them. Last, she placed one in front of her father. She paused for a single heartbeat, then returned to the head of the table. She did not sit. She stood, back ramrod straight, her voice commanding, but measured and clear. In front of you is the new direction Alcaraz Holdings will be taking, effective tomorrow morning. We will no longer be tyrants in Spain. We will be accountable for our actions, and we will honor every person. She paused. I will not take questions now. Marge, she turned slightly toward her assistant, will schedule individual appointments with each of you over the coming week to see me in my office. And with that, she picked up her briefcase and walked out of the boardroom, not looking at anyone, least of all her father. The click of the door was followed by chaos. Nevestri Alcaraz kept walking. She reached her office, closed the door behind her, and leaned against it. Only then did she exhale for the first time. She had lit a match in a room filled with dynamite and walked out intact. She knew the shrapnel would follow soon. She was ready. The silence in her office lasted barely 5 minutes before the door swung open with a bang and Antonio Alcaraz stormed in. His eyes were wild, his words spitting venom, but Nevestri remained seated behind her desk, watching the man who had held her at birth, the man who had taught her everything about business from the moment she learned to speak. The man responsible for her loneliness, for her cold heart, the man who had groomed her to be ruthless. Who do you think you are? He snarled, his words like knives. I built this company with blood and sweat. She saw the spit at the corners of his mouth, the veins in his neck straining. In all her 31 years, she had never heard the words proud, love, or you did well come from him. She waited until he took a breath. Then she stood. Her voice was a blade, precise, merciless, and it slid cleanly into his chest. Father, I am no longer your puppet. With your 15% share, you have no power here or over this company. If you are unhappy with how I intend to run it, I suggest you leave. She watched the exact moment his mind short-circuited. Watched the most powerful man she had ever known collapse into nothing more than a man with money. She watched him shrink. And in that moment, something inside Nevestri Alcaraz breathed to life. Antonio Alcaraz stood before his daughter and realized he no longer held power over her. He could not threaten her. He could not make her small. He turned and left her office, defeated. And for the first time in what felt like forever, Antonio Alcaraz's money meant nothing. Chapter 3: New World Order. The early morning sun crept through the blinds of her penthouse. Nevestri stirred and stretched. Her eyes blinked open and she smiled. A full smile. For the first time, Nevestri Alcaraz had not woken in her office. She had not stayed awake all night, fighting the dark with spreadsheets and silence. She rolled onto her back and stared at the ceiling, her mind astonishingly at ease. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. She reached for it, frowning as she read the notification. New leader at the helm of Alcaraz Holdings. She sat up, scrolling through the article. This is not going to be easy, she whispered, more promise than doubt. But I will make it work. The smart coffee machine chimed through the penthouse. Nivestri swung her legs off the bed and padded barefoot to the kitchen, dressed in one of her oversized university t-shirts. She poured herself a cup and leaned against the counter, scrolling through the flood of notifications. Articles. Commentary. Media speculation. Her PR team had moved fast. She sipped her coffee without rush and unfamiliar luxury, then set the cup in the sink, showered, and dressed for the office. The drive began like every other morning. Her driver waited at the curb, the black sedan idling patiently. It was routine, predictable, until it wasn't. She stepped out of the building, and something in her peripheral vision snagged her attention. Nivestri stopped beside the car but didn't get in. She looked down the road, and her world tilted. For feet from her stood a ghost. Someone she had buried a decade ago. Someone she had sworn on blood and breath that if they ever crossed her path again, she would end them. The man in the gray hoodie and combat pants looked grotesquely out of place in front of the glass and steel building. When he saw her, their eyes met. He shifted under the weight of her stare. Nivestri approached, fists clenched. You have some nerve, she said, her voice lethal and low, showing your face here. Give me one good reason why I shouldn't let my bodyguards have their fun with you. He took a step closer. She's still alive. The world went silent. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. No sound came. Her knees wobbled. Her heart slammed against her ribs. What did you say? She forced out. He stepped closer. The years had carved exhaustion into his face. He ordered me to make her disappear, he said. I couldn't. So I hit her. He pulled a folded piece of paper from his pocket and held it out. Nivestri stared at it, then at him. And I'm supposed to just believe you? He has no power over either of us anymore, he said quietly. This is my last act of kindness. I know what he did to you. And to her. Her hand trembled as she took the paper. It was creased, edges greasy, smeared with old mud, but the handwriting was unmistakable. Her breath caught as she read 3 words. Come fetch me. The paper slipped from her fingers. Tears spilled freely as she stared at it lying at her feet. When she looked up, her voice shook. Where is she? He handed her another slip of paper, coordinates. Nivestri closed her eyes as she took it, surrendering, briefly, to the storm. She wept not only for the life she had lost, but for the love she had never been allowed to keep. Without another word, she bent, picked up the paper, turned and climbed into the car and sat in silence. Her driver didn't speak. He simply drove. In the underground parking of Alcaraz Holdings, the driver opened her door. Nivestri didn't move immediately. She wiped her face, reapplied her makeup, and rebuilt herself piece by piece. When she stepped out of the car, the cold composure of the majority shareholder and CEO slid back into place. The 42nd floor buzzed with unease. Uncertainty clung to the air. Nivestri stepped out of the elevator and walked toward her office. She passed her assistant, paused briefly, then continued inside. Marge followed, closing the door behind her. Get Carlos Perez in my office within the hour, Nivestri said. Schedule a board meeting for 12. Book the auditorium for 3. I want every department head present. She inhaled, then softened. And Marge, get my father on the phone. Now. Marge left. Nivestri turned to the window. Valencia stretched beneath her, sunlit, breathtaking. She didn't see it. Her mind was elsewhere. On a cold winter morning, 10 years ago. Chapter 4, A Love Lost. Nivestri Alcaraz was 21 when she learned what power really cost. She sat across from her father in his office, tears streaming down her face as she pleaded. Papa, please, she begged. Don't do this. I love her. I'll do anything you want, anything, but please, don't. Antonio Alcaraz stood at the window of their Spanish villa, his back to her. He was a hard man, harder still where business was concerned. Feelings meant nothing to him. Only mergers. Only balance sheets. His voice was cold when he spoke. You are an Alcaraz, he said. And I will not have you embarrassing me with that woman. That woman was Ekaterina Kolesnik, Moldovan-born, daughter of a vineyard worker. She had no money, no pedigree, and worst of all, to him, no way to give him an heir. Nevestri had met Ekaterina while studying abroad. She was brilliant, gentle, unapologetically herself. She stole Nevestri's heart without effort. They were together for a year. A quiet, defiant happiness. They believed, foolishly, that love might be enough. Antonio had other plans. Nevestri would finish her degree. She would return home. She would join the company. They were asleep in Nevestri's university apartment when the front door burst open. Two of Antonio's men grabbed Ekaterina from the bed and dragged her away as she screamed. Antonio held his daughter back, his grip ironclad. That was the last time Nevestri saw her. She pleaded. She begged. She broke. He threatened her, and she complied. She finished her degree. She went home. She tried again and again to persuade him to let Ekaterina go. He never listened. Now, 10 years later, the past had clawed its way back. A knock sounded on her office door. Marge stepped in, informing her that her father was on his way up. Nevestri nodded and took her seat behind the desk. She waited for the man responsible for a decade of pain. For the man who had stolen her entire world. Then he stepped into her office. Antonio sat across from her, smug and self-satisfied. She said nothing. She let the silence rot between them, watching as the last remnants of respect she held for him finally disappeared. He straightened his jacket. Have you changed your mind, Nevestri? She exhaled, a deep, cleansing breath, and opened her drawer. From it, she pulled a photograph. A younger Nevestri smiled from the image. She remembered who had taken it. That was the last time she had smiled like that. Like she had found her forever. She slid the photo across the desk. This, she said coldly, was the last time I was human before you destroyed my life. Antonio frowned. She didn't stop. That photo was taken hours before you dragged her from our bed and into the night. I will never forgive you. That was the day you lost me. The day I finally saw you for what you are. She leaned forward. A monster. She continued evenly, ruthlessly. You will return to your office. You will pack your things. At 12 o'clock, you will walk into the boardroom and hand in your resignation. I'll let you keep your shares, but you will have no influence in this company or my life ever again. She slid a flash drive across the desk. I don't care where you retire or what hole you crawl into. Just disappear. She met his eyes. That drive contains copies of your illegal dealings and your murders. If you don't comply, our next conversation will be at the National Intelligence Center. Her voice dropped. Am I clear, father? The color drained from his face. He opened his mouth. She raised her hand. The only word you're allowed right now is yes. For the first time in his life, Antonio Alcaraz obeyed. Yes. Nevestri stood, ending it. She walked to the door and held it open. Chapter 5, Proof of Life. In a forgotten, dark corner on the other side of the world, a small figure sat with her knees drawn to her chest, pressed against a cold, damp wall. Her frame was slight, fragile. Her body bore the unmistakable marks of malnutrition and abuse. Ekaterina Kolesnik had been in this hellhole for 5 years. Before that, she had been running. The night Antonio Alcaraz tore her from Nevestri's arms, she was taken to a warehouse on the outskirts of town. She was held there for a week, counting breaths, memorizing shadows, before she escaped. She fled. She tried to reach Nevestri. Again and again. Every time she got close, danger followed. So, she wrote a letter. Told her to meet her at the pier that night. Ekaterina waited for 2 hours. When Nevestri didn't come, she left. She couldn't go home, her family would have paid the price. Instead, she disappeared into the underground. She joined a covert network and became their hacker. She buried herself so completely that Ekaterina Kolesnik ceased to exist. In her place rose Anya Gerber. But Antonio Alcaraz had money, and reach, and patience. 5 years later, she was caught. Now she sat in the cell as the years ticked past, one indistinguishable day at a time. She had stopped trying to escape, stopped hoping, stopped believing she would ever see Nevestri again. The cell door opened. A metal plate scraped across the floor, food, or something resembling it, piled onto a dirty dish. Ekaterina crawled closer, but didn't eat. She stared at it, as though it might offer meaning. Or answers. Or mercy. Death would have been kinder. Her once-long brown hair hung matted and filthy around her shoulders. The storm-gray eyes that had once burned with love and brilliance were now hollow, dulled by survival. She lifted her gaze to the guard and whispered, barely audible, "Why keep me alive? Just end it, please." The old man shook his head and closed the door. On the other side of the world, Nevestri Alcaraz sat across from Carlos Perez. She slid the coordinates across the desk. "I need an address," she said evenly. "Yesterday. And don't give me excuses." Carlos nodded, took the paper, and stood. As he reached the door, Nevestri spoke again. "I want proof of life." Then he was gone. At 3 o'clock, Nevestri stood at the podium in the auditorium, facing every department head of Alcaraz Holdings. Nervous faces stared back at her. She began without ceremony. "You've all received the email outlining the new direction this company is taking," she said. "There will be no layoffs." The room remained silent. "Effective immediately, our health policies will change. Every employee will receive full medical care. No exceptions. No loopholes." A breath. "We are investing in community centers. In housing for employees who have none. Alcaraz Holdings will fund and operate women's centers for survivors of abuse." The clock above the doors ticked loudly. "If anyone disagrees with this direction," she finished calmly, "I expect their resignation on my desk by morning." She stepped off the podium and walked out. The following week unfolded with surgical precision. Every department head stayed. Every system adapted. Every promise moved from paper to practice. A new lineage was born. And the name Nevestri Sabriana Alcaraz was no longer spoken with fear or distance, but with loyalty, respect, and quiet pride throughout Valencia. Chapter 6. First Contact. The helicopter settled onto the helipad above Alcaraz Holdings, its blades slicing the air into a violent storm. Wind whipped around Nevestri, tugging at her hair, snapping against her suit, but she didn't flinch. She stood ramrod straight. Control was second nature now. Carlos Perez jumped down before the blades had fully slowed and ran toward her. His words were swallowed by the engine's roar, so he leaned close, his mouth at her ear, breath warm and urgent. "We found her." The world tilted. Not dramatically. Not violently. Just enough for Nevestri to feel it in her bones. She closed her eyes for half a second, just long enough to keep herself standing. "Alive?" she asked, her voice eerily calm. Carlos nodded once. Sharp. Final. Barely. But yes. Her chest tightened. Oxygen felt optional. Pain felt familiar. "Where?" she demanded. Carlos handed her a tablet. Satellite images. Coordinates. A grainy still of a concrete structure half swallowed by forest and neglect. Eastern Europe. Off the grid. Private facility. Not a prison. Something worse. Nevestri studied the screen with the cold precision of a strategist, but inside her chest, 21-year-old Nafi was screaming. "How soon?" she asked. "We can be wheels up in 45 minutes. But, Carlos hesitated, "You shouldn't go." That earned him a look sharp enough to cut glass. "I wasn't asking permission." The jet roared into the night sky less than an hour later. Nevestri sat alone, seatbelt fastened, hands folded in her lap like she was waiting for a verdict. The cabin lights were dimmed, the hum of the engine steady, hypnotic. Carlos watched her from across the aisle. "You don't have to see her like this," he said quietly. "We can extract her first. Stabilize her." Nevestri's gaze never left the darkness outside the window. "She waited 10 years," she replied. "I won't make her wait one more minute." Silence settled between them. Then, softer, almost fragile. "Does she know it's me?" Carlos shook his head. "She doesn't know anyone is coming." Nevestri swallowed. "Good." If Ekaterina woke up believing she was hallucinating, If hope shattered her all over again, Nevestri would never forgive herself. The compound smelled of damp concrete and rot. Armed men were neutralized with ruthless efficiency. Locks were broken. Doors forced. Carlos led the way down a narrow corridor lined with steel cells. Nevestri's step slowed. Her heart pounded so loudly she was sure everyone could hear it. They stopped at the last door. "This is her," Carlos said. For the first time since the helicopter landed, Nevestri hesitated. Then she nodded once. The door creaked open. The cell was dim, bare, inhuman. A small figure sat against the wall, knees drawn up, hair hanging in tangled strands around a face too thin, too still. For a moment, just a moment, Nevestri couldn't breathe. Ekaterina. Her name lived in Nevestri's chest like a prayer and a wound. She took one step inside. The sound of boots on concrete made Ekaterina flinch. She lifted her head slowly, eyes dull, guarded, exhausted. Fear flickered first. Then confusion. Then nothing. Nevestri dropped to her knees in front of her, heedless of the floor, the dirt, the world. Her voice broke, just slightly. "Icie." Ekaterina blinked. Once. Twice. Her lips parted, but no sound came. Nevestri reached out, stopped herself, then gently took Ekaterina's trembling hands in hers. "It's me," she whispered. "It's really me." Ekaterina stared at her as if looking through fog. "Nafi," she breathed, the name fractured, uncertain. Tears flooded Nevestri's eyes. "Yes," she said, voice shaking now undone. "I'm here. I've got you. I'm not leaving you again." Something shattered in Ekaterina's chest. A sob tore free, raw, animal, unstoppable. She collapsed forward, gripping Nevestri's suit like it was the only thing anchoring her to life. Nevestri wrapped her arms around her, holding her tightly, fiercely. "I'm so sorry," she whispered into Ekaterina's hair. "I should have found you sooner. I swear to you, this ends now." Ekaterina clung to her, shaking. And for the first time in 10 years, she wasn't alone. Chapter 7. Extraction. They didn't move her right away. Ekaterina was wrapped in a thermal blanket, her body too weak for sudden motion. A medic knelt beside her, speaking softly, explaining every touch before it happened. No surprises. No commands. Nevestri stayed on the floor with her. She didn't let go. When the 4 needles slid into Ekaterina's arm, she flinched violently, a sharp gasp tearing from her throat. Nevestri tightened her grip instinctively. "It's okay," she whispered. "I won't let anything happen to you." Ekaterina didn't look at her. Her eyes were fixed on the door, on the shadows beyond it, on a threat that no longer existed but still lived in her bones. When they finally lifted her, Ekaterina panicked. "No, no, please," her voice cracked, frantic hands clawing at Nevestri's jacket. "Don't leave me." "I'm right here," Nevestri said, pressing her forehead to hers. "I'm right here. You're not alone. You won't be alone again." The words tasted dangerous. Promises always did. But Ekaterina nodded, clinging to them anyway. The jet was quiet. Ekaterina slept only in fragments, short, shallow stretches interrupted by sudden jerks awake, eyes wild, breath ragged. Every time, Nevestri was there, grounding her with touch, with voice, with presence. Sometimes Ekaterina pushed her away. Sometimes she pulled her closer. Once, half asleep, she whispered, "You didn't come." Nevestri swallowed hard. "I know," she said quietly. "And I'm sorry." No defense. No explanation. Just truth. Chapter 8. Healing is not linear. The safe house was warm. Clean. Overlooking the sea. It still felt like a cage. Ekaterina refused the bedroom at first. Too many walls. Too many memories. She slept on the couch, back to the door, lights on. She flinched at footsteps. Froze when voices rose, even in laughter. She didn't ask where they were. She didn't ask if Antonio could reach them. She already assumed he could. Nevestri watched her relearn freedom like a foreign language. She offered food and withdrew it when Ekaterina couldn't eat. She suggested showers and stepped away when panic hit. She asked questions and learned when silence was the answer. They spoke around the past. Never directly through it. One evening, as dusk bled into the room, Ekaterina finally spoke. "You ruined my life," she said softly, not looking at her. Nevestri didn't react, didn't interrupt. "You didn't come," Ekaterina continued. "I waited. I thought, maybe if I waited long enough, you'd choose me." Her hands trembled. "I was 21, Nevestri said carefully. "And afraid." "That doesn't help," Ekaterina replied. "I know." Silence stretched between them, heavy, necessary. "I don't know how to trust you," Ekaterina whispered. Nevestri nodded once. "Then don't," she said. "Not yet. Just, let me stay." Ekaterina looked at her then. Really looked. "Staying is the hardest part," she said. Chapter 9. Ghosts Don't Ask Permission. The nightmares started on the fourth night. Ekaterina woke screaming, choking on terror, body curled in on itself like she was bracing for impact. Nevestri reached for her and was shoved back hard, panic-fueled strength flashing through Ekaterina's limbs. "Don't touch me," she cried. Nevestri froze instantly. Hands up. Voice calm. I won't touch you." It took 20 minutes for Ekaterina's breathing to slow. When she finally spoke, her voice was hollow. "They used to come at night." Nevestri felt something inside her crack. "I know," she said. "And they're gone." "They're not," Ekaterina replied. "They're in my head. They follow me everywhere." Nevestri sat on the floor in front of her, close enough to be seen, far enough to be safe. "Then we'll face them together," she said. "At your pace. On your terms." Ekaterina stared at her. "Why now?" she asked. "Why did you come now?" Nevestri didn't look away. "Because I finally have the power I should have had back then," she said. "And because I never stopped loving you." Ekaterina exhaled shakily. "Love doesn't erase fear." "No," Nevestri agreed. "But it can stand beside it." Chapter 10. Fractured Trust. The safe house was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that made every creak and whistle of the wind feel like a predator. Ekaterina sat cross-legged on the floor, knees drawn to her chest, staring at the tile. The bruises under her eyes were faint, but her gaze was sharper than steel, cold, assessing, calculating. She didn't look at Nevestri, didn't speak, didn't eat. Nevestri knelt beside her. Her hand hovered in the air for a long beat before resting lightly on Ekaterina's shoulder. It wasn't meant to soothe. It was a question, "May I stay close?" Ekaterina flinched. Her voice was a whisper, dry as gravel. "Don't. I'm not leaving." "Then get away." And yet, Nevestri stayed. Silent. Patient. Breathing alongside her. Time stretched. Hours passed. Ekaterina shivered, not from cold, but from every memory clawing at her chest. The night she was torn away, the streets she ran, the men she hid from, the years she'd buried herself beneath a new identity. When she finally spoke, it was ragged, jagged. "You didn't show up. 10 years. I waited. I trusted you to come and you, nothing." Nevestri swallowed. Her voice caught on the sharp edges of guilt. "I know. And I will never excuse that. I was powerless then in ways I didn't see, and I was a coward. But I will stay now. I'm not going anywhere." Ekaterina's laugh was bitter, shaking, full of disbelief. "Stay. Everyone says that. But you don't understand. You can't understand. I will try. I'll follow your rules." Chapter 11. Nightmares. The nightmares came like a storm at night. Ekaterina woke screaming, tangled in her blanket, soaked in sweat. Her back arched as if she were still being thrown to the ground. Nevestri's hands hovered above her, unsure, trembling with a combination of fear and care. "It's gone," Nevestri whispered, voice steady but low. "I promise. No one can touch you here." "They?" Ekaterina gasped, eyes wild, pointing to nothing. "They'll come for me. He sent them. You didn't stop it. You didn't." She broke off into sobs, curling up into herself. Nevestri stayed beside her, silent witness. She didn't try to argue. Didn't try to force absolution. She just let Ekaterina claw at the past and the ghost of pain. Hours passed. The storm slowed. Nevestri finally spoke. "I can't undo what happened. But I can be here. Always." Ekaterina finally looked at her, tears streaming down her face, mascara streaked, raw. Then prove it. Don't just say it. Don't ever leave again. Not for 10 minutes. Not for 10 seconds. Prove it. And Nevestri nodded. I will. Chapter 12, First Fragile Steps. Healing isn't linear. The next days were full of friction. Ekaterina wouldn't let Nevestri touch her. She refused to sit near doors. She jumped at shadows. She lashed out at Nevestri, at the guards, at anyone who moved too fast. And yet, she began to eat. Slowly. Nevestri made sure the meals were small, familiar, comforting. She watched, patient, letting her choose each bite. They spoke in fragments. Not about love. Not yet. About safe routes to walk outside. About what colors could calm the mind. About numbers, anything that allowed control without risking memory. One evening, Ekaterina allowed Nevestri to brush a tangle out of her hair. Hands trembling. Eyes down. Silent consent. That small, fleeting act was a battle one. And that night, when she finally curled up on the couch without lights on, Nevestri stayed in the same room. Not touching. Not speaking. Just present. And for Ekaterina, presence was armor. Chapter 13, Reclaiming Light. The sun barely rose over Valencia, painting the city in pale gold and gray. Inside the safe house, Ekaterina sat on the floor, knees drawn up, staring at a small patch of sunlight creeping across the wall. She didn't move, didn't speak, didn't acknowledge Nevestri's presence behind her, preparing breakfast. Nevestri didn't rush. She left the plate untouched, setting it nearby, and just knelt a few feet away. Silent. Watching. Waiting. Hours passed. Then, slowly, Ekaterina shifted her gaze, just slightly. Her storm-gray eyes met Nevestri's, narrowed and calculating, but searching. I don't even know who I am anymore, Ekaterina whispered, voice raw. I've been someone else for 5 years, 10 years, hiding, surviving. And now I'm supposed to just be me again. Nevestri's hands rested lightly on her knees, not touching, just grounding her presence. No, you're not supposed to just be anyone. You're supposed to be yourself. And I'll follow every step. Every step you take, I take with you. No rush. No pressure. Ekaterina's lips trembled. She wanted to argue, to lash out, to retreat, but a small part of her, buried deep, whispered, maybe this time it will be different. First taste of freedom. The first outing was the hardest. Nevestri drove her to a quiet park near the river. The air smelled of rain and earth. Ekaterina's muscles tensed the moment she stepped outside. Every passerby was a threat. Every shadow was a memory of pursuit. I can't, she said, voice tight, shaking. I can't, just walk. You can. Slowly. One step at a time. Even if it's to that bench over there. They moved, tiny steps at first. Ekaterina's body felt alien to her, her movements cautious, a mixture of fear and rusty muscle memory. But with every step, Nevestri mirrored her pace, letting her set the rhythm. When they finally sat on the bench, Ekaterina exhaled a long, shuddering breath. I forgot what it felt like to just sit and not worry about someone taking everything from me. You never have to feel that way again, Nevestri said softly. And for the first time in years, Ekaterina's grip on the world loosened just a little. The ghosts lurk. Even in moments of fragile peace, nightmares followed her. That night, Ekaterina woke screaming, sweat clinging to her skin. She bolted upright, gasping, every muscle coiled with fear. Nevestri was already there, hands gentle, but firm, on her shoulders. Breathe with me, she murmured. Ekaterina shook her head violently. It's him, he's here. I can't. You can, Nevestri said, voice steady as steel. I'm here. He's not. It took hours. Tears, shaking, silent sobs. And slowly, finally, the storm in her chest calmed. She leaned into Nevestri, not fully, not yet, but enough to know she wasn't alone. Tiny acts, big triumphs. The next week was a series of small victories. Ekaterina cooked her first meal in years, with Nevestri standing nearby, not instructing, just observing. She laughed for the first time at a joke Nevestri made, not loud, not free, but fragile and genuine. And one evening, she let Nevestri hold her hand, not because she had to, but because she wanted to. Each act was a rebellion against the years of fear, a reclaiming of agency. Every small success was a spark, and those sparks began to light a fire inside her again, a fire that remembered warmth, safety, love. Chapter 14. The Monster is Gone. The first morning together was quiet. Ekaterina sat cross-legged on the bed, wrapped in a blanket like armor. Nevestri brewed coffee in the kitchenette, the rich aroma filling the apartment. She moved with ease, calm, steady, every gesture a reminder that she was here, alive, and nothing in the world could take that from them now. Finally, Nevestri set 2 cups on the table. "Drink this. It'll help wake you up," she said softly. Ekaterina looked at the steaming mug, then at Nevestri. Why are you here? After all this time?" Her voice was hoarse, trembling. "After 10 years, you didn't show." Nevestri sat across from her, eyes meeting hers without a flicker of shame or hesitation. "I know. I failed you. I can't take back the past, but I can fix the future. I promised myself I would, and I have." Ekaterina's hands trembled over the cup. She wanted to believe her, but the habit of fear, of doubt, clawed at her chest. Nevestri reached across the table, her fingers brushing Ekaterina's. "The man who hurt you, my father, he's gone. He has no power over us. No control. Not over you. Not over me. None. He cannot touch this life anymore." For the first time in years, Ekaterina let herself breathe, just a little. She lowered her hands and watched Nevestri. The steady, unflinching gaze reassured her. All of this?" She gestured to the apartment, to the life around her. "You really did this?" "I did," Nevestri said. "I own the company now. 66%. My father? 15%. He can't interfere, can't threaten you or me. We are free. We can finally be free." The words were heavy and soft, carrying relief and power at the same time. Ekaterina's storm-gray eyes glistened. She swallowed hard, trying to hold back tears she had kept in for years. "And you're not the monster either?" Nevestri shook her head, a small sad smile tugging at her lips. "No, I'm not him. I'm me, Nevestri. I can't undo the past, but I can protect your present. And maybe, slowly, I can help heal the rest." Ekaterina's hands tightened around the mug. I want to believe you." Nevestri's eyes softened. "Then do. Not all at once. Just let it grow, step by step. The ghosts will come, the memories, the fear. But we'll face them together." A long pause settled between them, quiet, fragile. The air was full of possibility, trembling with cautious hope. Ekaterina took a deep breath and, for the first time in years, allowed herself to lean just slightly toward Nevestri. Not fully. Not yet. But enough to feel a spark of warmth where cold had ruled for a decade. Nevestri reached her hand forward again. "Trust me with this moment. That's all I ask." And with a shaky, tentative smile, Ekaterina placed her hand over Nevestri's. The connection was electric in its simplicity, trembling but real. For the first time, she felt the possibility of safety, of love, of life, not just survival. "I'll try," she whispered. "That's all I need," Nevestri said, a quiet fierceness in her voice. "Step by step, Ekaterina. We start here, together." And in that fragile morning light, with coffee steaming and the world waiting outside the window, the first real threads of trust began to weave between them. The monster that had haunted her was gone. And maybe, just maybe, love could survive the ashes of the past. Chapter 15. The First Shared Night. The apartment was quiet except for the faint hum of the city below. Ekaterina sat curled up on the couch, the blanket drawn tight around her. Shadows from the streetlights danced across the walls, and though the room was warm, her body felt the chill of years spent in darkness. Nevestri moved silently to the kitchenette, filling a small carafe with hot water, then carrying it over to the couch. She sat beside Ekaterina, careful not to crowd, careful to let her space be sacred. "Tea?" Nevestri asked softly, holding out the cup. Ekaterina shook her head, hugging herself tighter. I can't stop seeing it, she whispered. The warehouse, the fear. I feel it every time I close my eyes. Nevestri's hand hovered over hers for a moment, then settled gently. I know. I can't take it away with words alone. But I can sit with it. With you. You don't have to face it alone tonight. The words were a fragile lifeline, and Ekaterina took it, letting herself shiver against the warmth of Nevestri's presence. Slowly, almost reluctantly, she rested her head on Nevestri's shoulder. The scent of her clean, safe, real, was grounding. Minutes passed. Or maybe hours. Time had lost meaning for them. Ekaterina's breathing slowed as the tension in her shoulders melted just slightly, and she let herself sink into the rare feeling of safety. Nevestri leaned her head against Ekaterina's, careful, patient. If it gets too much, she murmured, you tell me. We stop. We just breathe. A soft sob escaped Ekaterina, and Nevestri's arms went around her, holding her tight but not forcing anything. The sound was not shameful, it was the echo of years of pain finally being heard. I've dreamed of this night, Ekaterina whispered after a while, and yet. I'm terrified. Terrified that you'll leave, that it's all a dream. Nevestri pressed a kiss to the top of her head. I'm not going anywhere. And if the nightmares come, I'll face them with you. Step by step, we move forward. The hours crept by, each one a delicate dance of trust. Ekaterina dared to rest her hand on Nevestri's, then to let her fingers intertwine. Nevestri's thumb brushed over her knuckles in slow, steady circles. A spark of connection flickered, fragile but real. Finally, Ekaterina turned slightly to face her, her eyes wet but shining. I want to try, she said, voice trembling. I want to let myself feel this, feel you. Nevestri leaned in slowly, giving Ekaterina every chance to pull back. When their lips finally met, it was not rushed, not desperate. It was soft, questioning, healing. A kiss that acknowledged the pain, the years, and the fragile hope that still remained. I'm here, Nevestri whispered against her lips, and I'm not going anywhere. For the first time in a decade, Ekaterina let herself trust. She let herself feel warmth, protection, and desire all at once. Each gentle touch, each whispered word, was a step away from the shadows that had haunted her for years. The night stretched on, quiet, intimate, and careful. No pressure, no expectations. Just two hearts learning to beat together after years of broken rhythm. Nevestri held her, and Ekaterina clung to the feeling, letting the ghosts linger at the edges but not consume her. By the time dawn brushed the sky with pale gold, Ekaterina lay in Nevestri's arms, breathing steady, eyelids heavy. She knew the scars would not disappear tonight, but for the first time, she felt the courage to face them, with Nevestri beside her. Chapter 16. Returning Light. The ride back to the penthouse was quiet. Ekaterina stared out the window, the city's lights blurring into a cascade of gold and silver. Nevestri didn't press, didn't fill the silence with words. Her hand rested lightly on Ekaterina's, a tether in the dark, letting her know she was not alone. When they arrived, the penthouse felt impossibly spacious and impossibly safe at the same time. Ekaterina paused at the threshold, unsure how to inhabit a life so far removed from the shadows she'd endured. Nevestri slid the door closed behind them and let a quiet smile settle over her face. I thought, maybe we could start slow, she said softly, gesturing toward the living area. Sit. Have some tea. No rush. No plans unless you want to. Ekaterina nodded, letting her knees draw up to her chest on the couch. Nevestri moved to the kitchen, poured 2 cups of steaming tea, and handed one to her. The warmth seeped into Ekaterina's hands, a small comfort she hadn't allowed herself in years. After a long sip, Nevestri hesitated, then said, I wanted to show you something. Not to overwhelm you, but to include you. You might want to take part, or just see it. Ekaterina tilted her head, cautious but curious. What is it? Nevestri pulled out a small tablet, opening documents and images of the new initiatives she had launched. This This is what I'm doing with Alcaraz Holdings. I promised my grandmother I'd turn the company toward helping people, the ones who were wronged, who were forgotten. One of the first things I want to do is launch centers for women who've suffered abuse. Safe places, support networks, therapy, education, everything I wish I had had the strength to provide for people like you. Ekaterina's fingers trembled slightly as she scrolled through the plans, the programs, the spaces carefully designed for healing. A part of her recoiled, remembering every nightmare, every lost year, but another part stirred, fragile, almost imperceptible, hope. You really mean this? Her voice was soft, skeptical, but trembling. I do, Nevestri said firmly. She leaned closer, her eyes locking with Ekaterina's. I want you to be part of it. Only if you want. At your own pace. Share your story, your pain, your truth, so we can help others. But never anything forced. Ekaterina swallowed, her chest tight. She had spent years hiding, surviving, carrying the weight alone. The idea of lifting even a fraction of that burden for someone else, it scared her. But the warmth of Nevestri's presence, the trust she'd begun to rebuild in these first nights, made it possible to imagine it. I don't know if I can, she admitted. Not yet. But maybe someday. That's enough, Nevestri said, smiling softly. No deadlines. No expectations. Just when you're ready. I'll be here. We'll do this together. The rest of the evening passed in quiet conversation, a blend of mundane moments, tea, shared silence, the city lights casting long shadows on the walls, and small steps toward reconnection. Ekaterina allowed herself to rest in Nevestri's presence without fear of judgment, without the constant pressure of survival. For the first time in years, the ghosts were still there, but they felt distant, and for the first time, Ekaterina imagined she could face them with someone by her side. Someone who would hold her, steady her, and never let her fall again. Nevestri reached out and tucked a stray lock of hair behind Ekaterina's ear. Tomorrow, she whispered, we start slow. You, me, and the world. At your pace. Ekaterina let herself nod, a quiet acknowledgement that perhaps, just perhaps, the world might not be so cruel, not with Nevestri beside her. And in that penthouse, under the glow of Valencia's skyline, healing had begun, not perfectly, not without pain, but real, raw, and fragile, ready to grow. Chapter 17. Fragile Threads. The quiet of the penthouse was broken only by the faint hum of the city outside. Nevestri's phone buzzed sharply, a name flashing on the screen that made her pulse quicken. She picked up immediately, her brow knitting. Marge? What's? Her voice caught mid-question as the message on the other end cut through her thoughts. There was an urgent situation at Alcaraz Holdings that required her immediate presence. Nevestri glanced at Ekaterina, who was curled on the couch with a blanket draped over her shoulders, still adjusting to this new world, this new life. I need to go back to the office, she said softly, brushing a stray curl from her face. You can come with me or stay here. I understand. Ekaterina's hands fidgeted with the edge of the blanket, and she shook her head. I'll stay, she murmured. I'm not ready yet. Nevestri nodded, understanding but unwilling to leave her completely untethered. Okay, she said. I'll keep my phone with me. Anytime you need me, call. I'll drop everything and be back. Promise. Ekaterina gave a small nod, but her lips were tight, betraying the anxiety still simmering just beneath the surface. Nevestri leaned down, kissed her temple, and whispered, breathe. You're safe. An hour later, Nevestri's phone vibrated violently in her hand. The screen flashed Ekaterina's name. The voice on the other end was trembling, frantic. Navi. I can't. I can't stop it. I thought I could, but please come back. Her heart clenched, and she didn't pause for a second. I'm on my way, she said firmly, already moving toward the door, her mind a single focus. The penthouse door swung open, and there she was, Ekaterina, curled on the bed, shaking, tears streaking down her face. The sight fractured something inside Nevestri, a mixture of anger at the past, sorrow for the pain Ekaterina had carried alone, and fierce protectiveness. Without a word, she moved to her side, kneeling on the floor, wrapping her arms around her trembling body. Ekaterina buried her face against Nevestri's chest, letting out sobs she had held in for years, the grief spilling out unchecked. "It's okay," Nevestri whispered. "It's okay to let it out. You're safe now. I'm here. I won't leave." Minutes passed, the sobs gradually slowing, the tension easing into exhausted relief. Finally, Ekaterina lifted her face, red and raw, and whispered, I don't know how to stop it. The nightmares, the guilt, the fear." Nevestri held her close, brushing tears from her cheeks. "We'll do it together. Therapy if you're willing. Slow, patient, at your pace. We face the ghosts together, but one step at a time. You don't have to fight this alone anymore." Ekaterina nodded, trembling, but the first spark of trust flickered in her eyes. "Slow. I can do slow," she said, voice shaking, fragile but determined. Nevestri smiled softly, pressing her forehead against Ekaterina's. "That's all I ask. One step at a time. Always together." In the quiet of the penthouse, the city sprawling below, two women began to stitch together the fragile threads of a life stolen by fear, starting with the small, courageous act of letting someone in truly in. Chapter 18. The First Session. The therapy room was quiet, dimly lit, a calm contrast to the chaos both women had left behind in the city outside. Ekaterina sat on the soft, neutral-toned couch, knees pulled up to her chest, hugging herself. Her hands were trembling, and her storm-gray eyes darted around the room, wary, suspicious. Nevestri sat next to her, but at a small distance, allowing space, a gentle anchor without pressure. She placed her hand lightly near Ekaterina's, letting her feel it without expecting her to take it. The therapist, a calm woman with silver-streaked hair and kind eyes, spoke softly. "Ekaterina, Nevestri has told me a little about what you've been through. We'll go slowly. No questions you're not ready to answer, no judgments, only space for what you need to release." Ekaterina's throat tightened. She wanted to speak, wanted to scream, but the words stuck. Her mind replayed nights in darkness, the cold, the hunger, the fear, the betrayal. She couldn't even begin to untangle 10 years of suffocating memories. Nevestri shifted slightly, her voice barely above a whisper. "Breathe with me, Ekaterina. In and out. Slowly. You're here. You're alive. You're safe." Ekaterina did, reluctantly at first, then deeper as Nevestri's calm rhythm guided her. The therapist let them settle, waiting. Minutes stretched like hours. Finally, Ekaterina spoke, voice raw, trembling. I never thought I'd be safe. Even now. I feel like I'm still running, like the walls are closing in. I can't stop looking over my shoulder." Nevestri's hand moved closer, brushing Ekaterina's fingers, not forcing, just an option, a lifeline. "You don't have to run anymore," she said. "I'm not leaving. I'm not going anywhere. You're not alone." Tears spilled over, hot and messy, as Ekaterina's shoulders shook. "But I trusted you once, and you didn't come. I thought I'd lost you forever." Nevestri swallowed hard, guilt and sorrow swirling in her chest. "I know. I can't take back the past. But I can be here now. I can't change what happened, but I can fight for you now every day, if you let me." The therapist nodded gently. "That's the first step, Ekaterina. Naming the pain, acknowledging the fear, allowing yourself to feel it without shame. Trust is built slowly, one moment at a time. You don't have to forgive the past yet, you just need to face it, here, where you're safe." Ekaterina nodded, exhausted but relieved at the honesty. She let herself cry more, but now, in small breaths, there was a difference. She was no longer alone in the dark. Nevestri's presence was steady, her voice unwavering, a lighthouse cutting through the storm. For the first time in years, Ekaterina allowed herself to feel the rawness of her emotions without fear of punishment, to taste freedom in the simple act of existing without immediate danger. Nevestri watched, a mixture of heartbreak and fierce protectiveness filling her chest. She knew the path ahead would be long, painful, and jagged, but this first session, this first step, was proof that the ghosts could be faced and maybe, just maybe, one day, exorcised together. When the session ended, Ekaterina leaned against Nevestri, trembling yet resting on her. "Thank you," she whispered, "for staying." Nevestri pressed her lips to the top of her head. "Always. One step at a time, Ekaterina. One step at a time." Outside, the city moved on, oblivious to the quiet revolution of trust and healing happening in that small therapy room. Chapter 19: Nightmares and Shadows. The first session had left Ekaterina drained, trembling in ways she didn't know still existed. That afternoon she fell asleep on the couch. Her dreams were merciless. She was back in the warehouse, the walls damp, her hands bound. Shadows danced on the walls, whispered threats curling through the darkness, and every face she had ever trusted twisted into something cruel. She awoke with a gasp, heart hammering, sweat soaking her hair. Her phone vibrated on the nightstand. Nevestri's name flashed across the screen. Without thinking, she answered. "Navi. I can't. The dreams, they're back." Her voice cracked, raw and vulnerable. "I know, love," Nevestri whispered, calm but urgent. "I'll be there in 15 minutes. Stay where you are. Lock the door. You're safe. Just breathe, okay?" Ekaterina did as she was told, curling back under the covers, hands clutching her chest. When Nevestri arrived, her presence filled the penthouse like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. She didn't ask questions first. She wrapped Ekaterina in a careful embrace, letting her sob and shake without judgment. "It's okay," Nevestri murmured. "I'm here. You're here. The warehouse doesn't exist anymore. I promise." Ekaterina pulled back slightly, eyes glistening, haunted. "I can't. It's like it's still inside me. I can't escape it." Nevestri cupped her face gently. "No, you don't have to escape it. Not yet. We face it together. One breath at a time. One memory at a time. You're not alone, Ekaterina. Never again." The therapist's techniques came to life in their own apartment. Nevestri helped her ground in the present, teaching her to name the things in the room, feel the texture of the blanket, the weight of her own body, the reality of warmth and air, and the tangible proof that the warehouse, the guards, the fear, they weren't real here. Session 2, the warehouse. The next therapy session was deliberate. Ekaterina sat, fists clenched, jaw tight, her body rigid with tension. Nevestri held her hand lightly, letting her choose whether to respond. "Tell me what you remember," Nevestri coaxed gently. Ekaterina's voice was hoarse. "The night he took me, the cold floor, the chains, the darkness. I can still hear them laughing. I can still feel the rope cutting into my wrists. And I thought no one would ever come for me." Nevestri squeezed her hand. "I did come for you. I am here now. The monster isn't coming back. The power he had over us, over you, is gone. I am your safety net. Always." The first confrontation was agonizing. Ekaterina's breaths came in sharp, uneven bursts. Tears streaked her dirt-streaked cheeks, though the room was safe and warm. She screamed not at Nevestri, but at the memory, letting rage and fear escape in a raw, guttural release. Nevestri held her firmly, murmuring, "Let it out. You are allowed to feel it all. You are allowed to be angry, scared, everything. And you are allowed to survive it." For hours, Ekaterina cycled through fear, anger, and grief. Nevestri never left her side, never judged, only held her, breathing with her, reminding her that she was here, alive and free. By the end of the session, Ekaterina was exhausted but calmer, a small sliver of relief breaking through the storm. She whispered, Maybe I can try again tomorrow. Maybe I can face it again." Nevestri kissed the top of her head, softly, reverently. "Yes, one day at a time. Always with me." Session 3, Ghosts of the Past. The next week, they worked on specific memories of betrayal and isolation, the nights in hiding, the letter that never reached Nevestri, the hopelessness. Ekaterina struggled, often shutting down, withdrawing into herself. But Nevestri patiently guided her. Sometimes they used writing exercises, sometimes vocal releases, letting Ekaterina scream or cry into the pillow, letting the ghosts have a voice so they could slowly diminish. "I hated you," Ekaterina said one day, voice breaking. "I hated you for not coming. I hated myself for thinking that I'd lost you forever." "I know," Nevestri replied softly. "I would have given everything to reach you, love. But the past is done. I am here now. I haven't left. And I never will again." That day, Ekaterina reached for Nevestri's hand on her own. Not because she was told to, not because she felt obligated, but because she wanted to trust her again. A small gesture, but monumental. Chapter 20. First Light. The morning sun crept into the penthouse, warm and golden. Ekaterina stirred, not with the usual heaviness in her chest, not with the dread of the nightmares that had haunted her for years. Instead, she felt lighter. Tentatively, she opened her eyes and saw Nevestri sitting on the edge of the bed, her notebook in hand, quietly watching her. "Good morning," Nevestri said softly, voice like honey, careful not to jolt her. Ekaterina blinked, then smiled, small, almost fragile, but genuine. "Morning." The word sounded strange on her lips, like reclaiming a part of herself she thought she'd lost. They had spent weeks in therapy together, each session peeling back the layers of pain, fear, and distrust. They had screamed, cried, and sometimes even sat in silence, the weight of shared trauma filling the room. But today, something had shifted. "You slept through the night," Nevestri observed. "No nightmares." Ekaterina shook her head. "None. For the first time in, I don't know, years, maybe ever. I didn't wake in fear." Her voice trembled with disbelief, a mix of relief and disbelief. Nevestri reached out and held her hand, thumb stroking the back of her knuckles. "That's your strength, love. You're safe. And you're facing it." For the first time, Ekaterina felt the weight of her past without being crushed by it. She could acknowledge the warehouse, the years of running, the nights of hopelessness, and still breathe. "I didn't think this was possible," Ekaterina whispered. "I thought the nightmares were permanent, that I'd always be broken." "You were never broken," Nevestri said firmly, eyes locking with hers. "You were surviving. You were hiding, protecting yourself. That's strength, Ekaterina. That's life." Tears welled again, but this time they were not of fear or grief, they were of release, of relief. Ekaterina let herself cry openly, and Nevestri held her, whispering truths she hadn't allowed herself to hear in a decade. After a long while, Ekaterina pulled back, breathing deeply, feeling the warmth of sunlight and the safe presence of Nevestri. I think I can start trusting again," she said, her voice soft but unwavering. "Not fully, not yet, but I want to." Nevestri smiled, the first full smile she had seen on Ekaterina in years. "That's all I need. One step at a time. One day at a time. And I'll be here for every step. Every single one." They lingered there in the quiet morning, letting the breakthrough sink in. The apartment smelled faintly of coffee and linen, the city hummed softly outside, and for the first time in over a decade, Ekaterina felt free, if only just a little. "I want to see the city today," Ekaterina said suddenly, her voice a mix of determination and awe. "I want to. I don't know, walk outside without feeling like someone's watching me, waiting to hurt me." Nevestri kissed her temple. "Then we'll do that. Today, we take the first real step back into life. And later, if you're ready, I'll show you the penthouse office, the company, the centers for women. You can be part of it at your own pace, when you feel safe. Your pain, your voice, they can help others, but only when you're ready." Ekaterina nodded, swallowing a lump in her throat. "I think I'm ready to try." And for the first time in 10 years, she smiled fully. Not the forced, brittle smile she'd given the world, but a true smile, one that reached her eyes, that carried the raw weight of her past yet glimmered with the hope of what was to come. Chapter 21. Stepping into Light. The city of Valencia stretched below them like a living mosaic, warm terracotta rooftops, winding streets, and the river glittering in the morning sun. Ekaterina stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of the penthouse, her fingers grazing the glass as if touching it could anchor her to reality. Nevestri came up behind her, gentle, calm, a presence she had not dared hope for a decade ago. "You ready?" she asked softly. Ekaterina nodded, though her chest tightened. I think I want to try." They left the penthouse together, side by side, the doorman offering a polite nod, which Ekaterina barely registered. The streets seemed louder than she remembered, full of movement, smells, life. Her breath hitched as a group of children ran past, laughing, a sound that once would have made her heart leap with longing and grief at what she had missed. Nevestri kept her hand lightly on Ekaterina's back, a tether, an unspoken promise of safety. "One block at a time," she said. "We don't rush this. We just walk." Ekaterina let herself feel the sun on her face, the wind in her hair. Every step was tiny rebellion against fear, every heartbeat a reminder she was still alive. When they returned to the penthouse, Nevestri guided her to the home office. "I want to show you something," she said. "Something important." On the desk lay plans and files, the new initiatives for Alcaraz Holdings. Nevestri gently opened one labeled, Women's Support Centers. Pictures of local communities, proposals for counseling rooms, safe spaces, empowerment programs. Ekaterina's eyes filled with tears. You remembered what your grandmother wanted. You remembered what we both suffered." Nevestri took her hand, holding it firmly. "I want you to be part of this. Not as a victim, never that, but as someone who's lived it, who can help others find the light we're finally discovering." Ekaterina swallowed hard. I don't know if I can." "You can," Nevestri said, voice unwavering. "You will. Slowly. At your own pace. We start small. Maybe you just read these files. Maybe you talk to one woman. You decide. No pressure. Ever." For the first time, Ekaterina felt agency, the kind she had been denied for 10 years. The thought was dizzying, terrifying, but intoxicating. They spent the next hour together, flipping through the plans, Nevestri explaining her vision, Ekaterina asking questions, tentative but alive. Each question, each answer, was a thread weaving them closer, trust rebuilding with deliberate care. Then Nevestri's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen. "I need to go back to the office. Urgent." Ekaterina tensed. "Should I?" "You can stay," Nevestri said softly. "I'll leave my phone on. Call me if you need me." "I promise I won't be gone long." With a kiss to her forehead, Nevestri left. Ekaterina felt the familiar knot of anxiety creep back, but she gripped the phone and breathed. "I am safe. I am here. She will come back." An hour later, the phone rang, shrill and urgent. Ekaterina's hand trembled as she picked it up. Nevestri's voice, calm but firm, filled her ear. "Ekaterina? What's wrong?" Her sobs racked her body, but there was relief in finally letting it out. Nevestri guided her through deep breaths, through grounding, through the release. By the time she arrived, Ekaterina was curled on the bed, shaking and crying, but alive, finally letting the pain surface instead of burying it. Nevestri sat beside her, brushing strands of hair from her face. "We will do this together," she whispered. "Step by step. Therapy, trust, healing. I'll never leave your side. We will face the ghosts, and we will face the world. Together." Ekaterina nodded, letting herself be held. For the first time in 10 years, she believed it could be different. Chapter 22. Finding her place. The therapy sessions continued, gentle at first, then probing, then relentless. Nevestri sat with her, hand always near, grounding her through the nightmares that came uninvited. Each dream of being chased, dragged, abandoned was met with patience, with breaths, with reminders that she was safe now. That Nevestri was here, that no one could hurt her again. Ekaterina hated the pain, hated the memories, hated how raw they left her, but she faced them. With every session, a piece of her armor fell away, revealing the person she had buried long ago, fierce, compassionate, alive. Then came the first trip to the new Alcaraz Women's Support Center. Nevestri had suggested she join, at her pace, simply observing at first. Ekaterina had nodded, anxious, but willing. She sat in the back of a bright, warm room, the walls lined with pictures of women smiling, determined survivors. One by one, women shared their stories: abuse, loss, survival. Ekaterina listened, her chest tight, her throat raw. Tears slipped down her cheeks, not for herself this time, but for the pain she knew these women carried. When one young woman faltered in her story, Ekaterina instinctively reached out, gently placing a hand on hers. The woman blinked, surprised, then leaned into it. The warmth and connection ignited something inside Ekaterina, a spark she had thought long dead. By the time the session ended, she felt exhausted but alive. Nevestri was beside her, silent, letting her process. As they walked to the car, Nevestri said softly, "You can come back tomorrow if you want. Or the day after. No pressure." Ekaterina looked up at her, her heart pounding. I think I want to. But maybe for just an hour. I need to get used to being here without feeling broken all over again. That's perfect, Nevestri said, brushing a loose strand of hair behind her ear. Small steps. That's all we need. You're doing this at your pace. Always your pace. The next week, she returned. Alone. For short periods at first, lingering in the room, taking in the stories, listening, supporting. With each session, the trust in herself grew, the trust in Nevestri's promise that she was safe strengthened. She started recognizing she had the power to comfort, to guide, to heal. Helping others helped her help herself. One afternoon, a woman came in who reminded her of her younger self, shy, frightened, on the verge of giving up. Ekaterina spoke softly, offering guidance, reassurance. When the woman's eyes filled with hope, Ekaterina felt something stir in her own chest. Purpose. Connection. A life no longer defined by fear or loss. Nevestri watched from across the room, pride softening the intensity in her eyes. She could see Ekaterina claiming pieces of her life, her strength, her agency. And every step forward, every small victory, was proof that love and patience could rebuild what had been shattered. By the end of the week, Ekaterina stayed longer than before, lingering to help with paperwork, organize sessions, and even offer support to women she had grown attached to. Slowly, she was becoming part of the world again, her pain acknowledged but no longer controlling her, her trust in Nevestri now rooted, unshakable. That evening, as they returned to the penthouse, Ekaterina leaned into Nevestri. I think I've found my place," she whispered. You have, Nevestri said, brushing her cheek gently. And this is just the beginning. We'll keep building. Together. Chapter 23. Taking the helm. The following weeks were measured, deliberate. Nevestri continued to oversee every aspect of the Alcaraz Women's Support Center, but she slowly began allowing Ekaterina to take the lead. At first, it was small things, greeting women at the door, organizing files, scheduling sessions. Nevestri stayed close, her phone always within reach, ready to step in, but mostly, she let Ekaterina navigate the space on her own. Ekaterina felt the weight of responsibility press against her chest, but it was different from fear. This was control, choice, a power she could wield for good. With every successful session, every smile or word of gratitude from the women, her confidence grew. She began to see the difference she could make, and, in doing so, heal herself. Nevestri observed quietly, rarely interrupting, offering guidance only when necessary. The first time Ekaterina ran a session entirely alone, Nevestri sat outside in the office, phone in hand, heartbeat tethered to hers across the building. When she emerged, pale but composed, Nevestri greeted her with a gentle smile. You did it, Nevestri said softly. They listened. You guided them. You handled it perfectly. Ekaterina let herself lean into that praise, feeling the warmth spread across her chest. It was harder than I thought. But good. I think I can do more. Over the next few days, Nevestri began handing over more responsibility, planning workshops, running support groups, even speaking with local authorities and donors. Each task was a test, and each test cemented Ekaterina's trust in herself. She began to carry the center with quiet authority, Nevestri nearby, a constant reminder that she wasn't alone, but no longer a crutch. One evening, after a long day, Ekaterina returned home exhausted but smiling. She sank onto the couch beside Nevestri and whispered, "I didn't think I'd ever feel this capable or needed." Nevestri wrapped an arm around her shoulders, holding her close. "You're both. You've been needed all along, but now you get to see it for yourself. This is your space, your work, your impact. And I'm proud of you more than I can say." Ekaterina rested her head against Nevestri's chest, letting herself feel the accomplishment, the relief, the tiny blossoming hope that life could be more than survival. That night, as she drifted to sleep, she dreamed not of chains or shadows, but of hands reaching out, of voices speaking truths, of a world where she could protect, nurture, and heal. And for the first time in years, the ghosts that haunted her felt like distant echoes, not chains. Chapter 24: Fire and Shadows. It started with a call. A woman at the center, shaken and tearful, had fled an abusive home, and her partner had followed her, demanding her return. The center's alarms went off as staff scrambled, but Ekaterina, now fully in charge of the session, had to take control. Her heart hammered as she guided the woman to a secure room, then instructed the staff calmly, "Lock all exits. Call the authorities. Make sure she is safe." Her voice was steady, but inside, memories of being trapped, chased, and powerless clawed at her chest. Minutes stretched like hours. Ekaterina's hands shook as she checked locks, ran through protocols, and tried to ignore the familiar panic rising from her past. The man outside was loud, threatening, but she forced herself to breathe, to focus. Nevestri arrived just as the police were on their way, but not before the man had banged on the doors, screaming and shouting, making the walls reverberate with fear. Ekaterina froze for a moment, paralyzed not by him, but by the ghosts of her own captivity. Nevestri was at her side in an instant, hand on her shoulder, grounding her. "Look at me," she said softly, voice firm but warm. "You know what to do. You can do this." The words were a lifeline. Ekaterina drew in a trembling breath, and with Nevestri's hand guiding her, she reclaimed control. She moved through the space, enforcing safety, reassuring the women in the center, and maintaining order. The man was arrested by the authorities soon after, but the adrenaline left her drained, shaking, tears spilling freely. Nevestri held her as they watched the police car drive away. "You did it," she murmured. "You saved them. You saved yourself too." Ekaterina's voice was barely audible. I thought I would freeze. I thought I'd." Her words trailed into sobs. Nevestri brushed her hair back, tender and grounding. "You didn't. You led. You protected. And when you faltered, you let someone who loves you hold you up. That's strength, Ekaterina. Not perfection, not being invincible. Strength is knowing when to reach for a hand." The night ended quietly in the penthouse. Ekaterina stayed curled against Nevestri, exhausted, but also alive in a way she hadn't felt for years. The incident at the center had tested her limits, drawn out her nightmares, and left scars, but it also proved to her that she could face danger, trauma, and fear, and survive. And for the first time, she realized that she didn't have to do it alone. Chapter 25: The Weight of Trust. The center was quiet in the morning sun. Ekaterina unlocked the doors herself, walking through the familiar halls that had once felt like a foreign territory, but now smelled of hope and quiet resilience. For the first time, Nevestri was not there, her presence reserved entirely for Alcaraz Holdings, leaving Ekaterina fully in charge. She paused in the lobby, taking a deep breath, feeling the weight of responsibility settle onto her shoulders. It wasn't just about the women in the center. It was about herself, about the years of pain and fear, about proving to Nevestri, to herself, that she could lead, protect, and heal at the same time. Her first session began, a group of women quietly taking their seats. Some trembled as they spoke of abuse, others were silent, shielding their hearts like fragile glass. Ekaterina's hands shook slightly as she guided them, but she remembered Nevestri's words. Strength is knowing when to reach for a hand. She listened. She asked questions. She offered comfort without pity, guidance without judgment. Each story mirrored fragments of her own life, the fear, the betrayal, the helplessness, and each time, she felt the old ghosts rise. But this time, she didn't let them consume her. She let them fuel her empathy and patience. Hours passed, and when the session ended, a woman approached her, hesitant. I feel like someone finally understands. Thank you. Ekaterina swallowed, feeling a lump in her throat. We understand, she whispered. And we're here for you every step of the way. Alone now in the quiet center, she wandered through the rooms, checking on the offices, the therapy spaces, and the small community kitchen. The empty building felt alive with possibility. She could feel Nevestri's trust in her like a warm hand resting lightly on her shoulder, and it was a weight she wanted to carry carefully. She sank into a chair in the lounge, closing her eyes for a moment, and whispered, I won't fail you, Navi. I'll be enough. I can do this. For the first time, it didn't feel like a hollow promise. It felt like a vow to herself, to the women, and to the love she and Nevestri were rebuilding. And in that quiet, she realized running the center on her own wasn't just about responsibility. It was about reclaiming her life, her voice, and her power, piece by piece, day by day. Chapter 26. Evening Confessions. The streets of Valencia glowed with warm evening lights as the car pulled into the penthouse parking. Ekaterina's hands tapped nervously on her lap, her pulse quick with excitement. Today had been the first full day she had run the center on her own, and she could barely contain herself. As soon as they stepped through the door, she dropped her bag and turned to Nevestri. Navi, you won't believe today, she began, her voice bubbling with energy. The session went so well. These women, they shared so much, and I think I really made a difference. I didn't just manage, I connected, really connected. Nevestri leaned against the kitchen counter, arms crossed, eyes soft with pride. I can see it, Issa, she said, her tone steady but warm. I can see how much you've grown, how much you care. You're doing this beautifully. Ekaterina's chest swelled at the words. She rushed to the couch, pulling off her shoes, and practically danced in place as she recounted each story, each small victory, every hesitant smile she had coaxed from the women. Nevestri smiled warmly, listened patiently, letting her pour out every detail, every emotion, offering gentle nods, a reassuring hand on her shoulder here and there. When Ekaterina finally paused, breathless and flushed, Nevestri moved closer, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. You should be proud, Ekaterina. You really should, she said softly. A shy smile curled Ekaterina's lips, her heart hammering in her chest. She stepped closer, closing the distance between them, letting herself feel safe in the warmth and steadiness of Nevestri's presence. Slowly, deliberately, she tilted her head, her lips meeting Nevestri's in a soft, lingering kiss. Nevestri's hand moved to the small of Ekaterina's back, drawing her closer, letting the quiet intimacy bloom. It was a kiss that held all the unspoken emotions, the trust, the relief, the love, and the months of pain they had endured apart. When they finally parted, Ekaterina nestled against Nevestri's chest, the steady beat of her heart a soothing rhythm. I missed this, she whispered, voice trembling. Nevestri pressed a gentle kiss to the top of her head. And I've been waiting for this moment with you. Every day, she murmured. They stayed there, entwined on the couch, letting the evening stretch around them, the warmth of shared triumph and shared love filling the space. Tonight, the ghosts of the past were held at bay, and for the first time in years, they could simply be together. Chapter 27. Full Circle. Morning sunlight filtered softly through the windows of the Women's Center. Ekaterina moved through the room with quiet confidence, greeting staff and clients with warmth and reassurance. Each nod, each word of encouragement was measured, intentional, proof that she had grown into a role, no longer just a visitor in this world of healing, but a leader. She paused by a table where a group of women were sharing their stories. Today, she didn't just listen, she guided, offering tools and strategies she had learned alongside Nevestri. The fear and hesitation in their eyes melted under her calm presence. For the first time, she realized that helping others heal was also helping her heal, each shared pain and each small victory a thread knitting together the pieces of her own fractured heart. After the session ended, she lingered a moment, jotting notes and reflecting. This space, this work, had become more than a responsibility, it was her calling. And yet, even in the midst of her confidence, she carried the tender awareness that Nevestri had trusted her with this power, and that trust was both exhilarating and humbling. Later, in the penthouse, Nevestri returned from the office, tired but radiant. She found Ekaterina seated on the couch, papers and notes spread across the coffee table. The sight of her immersed in the work, fully alive, made Nevestri's chest swell with pride. "You handled the morning beautifully," Nevestri said, letting herself sit beside Ekaterina. Ekaterina looked up, a smile brightening her face. "It was incredible. And challenging. Some of their stories hit me hard, but I think I'm starting to understand the weight of this, and also the joy in being able to give them something back. Anne, I couldn't have done it without you, Navi." Nevestri reached for her hand, lacing their fingers together. "You've done this yourself, ECA. I trusted you because I saw your heart, and you've proven it. They're lucky to have you. And so am I." Ekaterina's gaze softened, and she leaned closer, the unspoken words hovering between them. I want to keep proving myself, to them, to you," she admitted. Nevestri's lips curved into a tender smile. "And you will. You already have." She pulled Ekaterina into a gentle embrace, holding her for a moment longer than necessary, letting the silence speak for all the words neither needed to say. As the evening settled around them, the warmth of their shared space wrapped them both in comfort and safety. Ekaterina rested her head against Nevestri's shoulder, and Nevestri's arm held her close. Their bond had grown deeper, rooted in trust, respect, and love, no longer fractured by ghosts of the past, but strengthened by the trials they had faced together. And as night descended over Valencia, there was a quiet certainty between them. They were building something enduring, together, unstoppable and free. Chapter 28. The Monster Returns. The morning sunlight poured through the windows of the center, soft and welcoming, but the calm was deceptive. Ekaterina had just finished briefing a new group of women volunteers when the receptionist's hurried voice pulled her attention. "Miss Kolesnik, there's someone here, asking for you. He says he's Antonio Alcaraz." Ekaterina froze. The name, the man, it was like ice running through her veins. Her fingers gripped the edge of the desk as she felt every shadow of the past surge forward. This was the man who had stolen her, the man who had destroyed her and Nevestri's life 10 years ago. She inhaled, forcing herself to steady her shaking hands. "Tell him I'll see him. In the conference hall," she said, her voice tight but resolute. She could feel the women around her sensing the tension, and they looked at her with expectant eyes. They trusted her, she could not falter. When the doors opened, Antonio Alcaraz stepped in, the same imposing figure he had always been, tailored suit sharp, eyes predatory. But this time, there was no Nevestri behind her, no shield of family power. She was alone. "Ekaterina Kolesnik," his voice was cold and measured. "I didn't expect to see you here." She straightened her back, voice clear and unwavering. "You're in my world now. I'm not afraid of you." Antonio smirked, a dangerous curl of the lip. Still defiant. "I see some things never change." The women at the center stood silently behind Ekaterina. She could feel their presence, their courage lending her strength. "You don't get to intimidate me here. I protect these women, and I protect myself. You've had your chance to control me, to hurt me, to ruin lives. That's over." Antonio's eyes flicked to the staff, but he quickly returned his gaze to her. "You think you can defy the Alcaraz name? You're playing with fire." "I am playing with the truth," Ekaterina shot back. "I am free. These women are safe. And your power ended the moment I chose to survive." The room seemed to hold its breath. Antonio stepped closer, but the women around her subtly shifted, creating a barrier of support. Ekaterina's pulse raced, but she did not flinch. "You've grown strong," he said, almost grudgingly. "But I still hold." Ekaterina cut him off, voice rising, commanding. "You hold nothing here. You are not welcome. You will leave this center right now, or I will personally ensure you never step foot in my life again. And make no mistake, if you try, every word you whispered in fear over the years, every crime, every lie, I will make the world know exactly who you are." For the first time, Antonio hesitated. He studied her face, the fire in her storm-gray eyes, the unwavering stance of a woman who had survived nightmares worse than he could ever imagine. And in that moment, he saw what Nevestri had seen years ago, the unbreakable core he had tried and failed to crush. He stepped back, lips tight, and finally said, "This isn't over." Ekaterina nodded once. "It is for me. Leave." With a final glare, he turned and walked out, leaving the room in stunned silence. Ekaterina exhaled, knees trembling, but spirit unbowed. The women gathered around her, some embracing her, others simply offering quiet smiles. Ekaterina allowed herself a brief moment to tremble, to let the adrenaline ebb, but then she straightened, taking in the room she now led. She had faced the monster alone, and she had not fallen. Chapter 29. After the Storm. The center was quiet now. The hum of the day's activity had faded, leaving Ekaterina alone with the echoes of her victory. She sank into the soft couch in her office, hands trembling, chest heaving. The adrenaline had faded, leaving raw exhaustion in its wake. For the first time in years, she felt the weight of everything she had endured and the strange, fragile relief of survival. Her phone buzzed. One message, "I'm on my way home. Are you okay? Nevestri." Ekaterina typed back with trembling fingers, I'm okay. Come home." The drive back to the penthouse was quiet. Ekaterina's thoughts raced, replaying every step, every heartbeat, every moment she had stared down the monster alone. And yet, beneath the fear and fury, there was a small spark, something she hadn't felt in a decade: pride. She had done this. She had survived. She had faced the past, and she had not broken. When she stepped into the penthouse, the warm glow of the evening lights felt like balm on raw skin. Nevestri was already there, standing by the window, arms crossed, silhouette framed by the golden glow of the city beyond. "You did it," Nevestri said softly, voice steady but thick with pride. Ekaterina's knees almost buckled. She closed the distance between them, voice shaking. I faced him. Alone. I didn't know if I could." Nevestri stepped forward, gently cupping her face in hands that had always held her with care, now radiating a quiet, unshakable love. "Yes, you did. And look at you. You're here. You're alive. You're free. And I'm proud of you. More than words can ever say." Tears blurred Ekaterina's vision. She leaned into Nevestri's touch, her forehead resting against hers. "I've carried so much for so long. So much fear, so much pain. I didn't know if I could ever let it go." "You can," Nevestri whispered, voice warm and steady. "And you will. Step by step, together. No one else has the power to take that from you, Isia. Not ever again." The words, the certainty, the presence of Nevestri beside her, wrapped around her like a shield. She let herself exhale, letting years of tension and fear fall away in small, shuddering breaths. Slowly, their lips met, first tentative, tasting the moment, savoring the warmth, the safety. Then, without hesitation, Ekaterina melted into Nevestri, hands threading through black silk hair, nails tracing shoulders, every touch a reclaiming of trust, a celebration of survival. Nevestri's hands moved with care, reverence, but with a passion that had always been there, held back only by fear and circumstance. They fell into the couch, limbs entwined, hearts beating in tandem. Ekaterina's body, mind, and soul opened, layer by layer, to the comfort, to the safety, to the love she had been denied for so long. And Nevestri, patient, tender, and fierce, guided her gently, letting her take the lead, honoring every tremor, every sigh, every tear. Hours passed unnoticed. The city lights flickered outside, indifferent to the rebirth happening within the walls of the penthouse. Ekaterina felt herself anchored in Nevestri's arms, and for the first time in a decade, she believed in the possibility of joy, of trust, of love that did not wound. Finally, they settled, foreheads resting together, breaths mingling, hearts still racing but calmer now. "I'm here," Nevestri whispered, voice low, steady, like a vow. "I know," Ekaterina replied, voice soft, unsteady but certain. "And I trust you." The words hung in the air, fragile and precious. And in that moment, the ghosts of the past, the years of fear, of loss, of abuse, felt a little less heavy. Together, they would face them. Together, they would heal. And together, they would love, without apology, without fear, without restraint. Chapter 30. Wings of Trust. The morning light spilled over Valencia, catching the glint of the glass building as Ekaterina strode into the center. Her steps were purposeful, confident, a reflection of the months of growth, therapy, and facing every ghost that had haunted her. The women at the center greeted her warmly, some with shy smiles, others with tears, all of them looking to her now for guidance, for hope. Ekaterina paused for a moment in the lobby, taking it all in. This was her world now, her space to give back, to heal others while she healed herself. She ran a hand over the smooth counter and allowed herself a quiet smile. Nevestri had trusted her completely, and that trust had ignited something she hadn't felt in years, belief in herself. By mid-morning, she was in her office, reviewing reports and coordinating sessions. Her phone buzzed intermittently with updates from Nevestri at Alcaraz Holdings, brief messages of encouragement, reminders that the business was thriving under her leadership. She kept her phone close, a lifeline, a tether to the woman who had saved her in more ways than one. But today, she didn't need it. Today, she was entirely in charge. The first session of the day arrived, a group of women who had suffered in silence for years. Ekaterina welcomed them, her voice gentle but firm, her presence a calm anchor. She shared parts of her story, enough to let them see their pain reflected, but not so much to drown in it. She listened to each woman's story, her heart aching and swelling with empathy, but also with the steady flame of someone who had survived, who had reclaimed her life. Hours passed in a blur of tears, laughter, revelations, and quiet moments of reflection. Ekaterina guided, counseled, encouraged. And as she watched one of the younger women finally speak about her fear, see the others nod in solidarity, she felt the tremor of triumph deep in her chest. This was her place, her purpose. And in nurturing them, she healed pieces of herself. By late afternoon, the center was quiet. Ekaterina walked through the halls, straightening chairs, adjusting books, tidying the space. She paused at a window, looking out at the city below, and allowed herself a long, slow breath. The wind caught her hair, and she closed her eyes, letting the sunlight warm her face. Then, a familiar voice echoed behind her. "How's my director?" She turned, smiling, and found Nevestri standing there, the commanding presence softened by pride and love. Ekaterina's chest lifted, heart swelling at the sight of her. I think I'm finally doing it," she admitted, voice low but steady. Nevestri stepped closer, sliding an arm around Ekaterina's waist, holding her in the way only she could, strong, tender, protective. "You're amazing," she said softly. "I trusted you with this, and you've blown me away." Ekaterina leaned into her, resting her head against Nevestri's chest. "I never thought I could be this capable. But you believed in me." "That's because I've seen the fire in you all along," Nevestri replied. "And you're letting it shine." They lingered in the quiet, the center empty, the city bustling silently outside. And in that stillness, Ekaterina realized something profound. She no longer needed to run from the past. She had faced it, survived it, and built something meaningful from it. Later, in the penthouse, they sat together on the couch, sharing the stories of the day. Ekaterina's eyes sparkled with excitement and pride as she recounted the breakthroughs, the laughter, the tears of the women she had guided. Nevestri listened with quiet reverence, pride evident in every line of her face. When the story settled, Ekaterina turned, reaching for Nevestri's hand, intertwining their fingers. "I couldn't have done this without you. Anne, I want you to know I trust you. Fully." Nevestri smiled, drawing her close. "And I trust you completely. You've earned this. All of it. And so much more." The kiss they shared this time was different, less tentative, more certain. Slow, deep, a communion of hearts, a celebration of survival and love. They melted into each other, limbs entwined, letting the quiet passion of months, of years of healing, speak in ways words never could. That night, as they lay together, the city lights casting golden patterns across the penthouse, Ekaterina realized she was free not just from the ghosts, but from the fear, from the loss, from the chains that had bound her. And beside her, Nevestri's steady warmth, unwavering love, was the anchor she had always needed. Together, they had faced monsters, shadows, and memories. Together, they had reclaimed trust, built love, and carved a new world. And in the quiet after the storm, nothing else mattered. For the first time in years, Ekaterina smiled, not a tentative, fragile smile, but a real one, the kind that reached her eyes and soul. And Nevestri, watching her, knew they had truly begun their life together. Epilogue: Roots and Wings. Sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the Alcaraz penthouse, casting golden patterns across the room. Outside, Valencia hummed with life, but inside, there was only calm, a quiet celebration of survival and love. Nevestri sat at the dining table, reviewing documents for the new community initiatives, but her mind was only half on the numbers. Across from her, Ekaterina moved with purpose through the kitchen, preparing a simple breakfast. The scent of fresh coffee and baked bread filled the room, and Nevestri watched her, heart swelling. The Center for Women had grown beyond anyone's expectations. Ekaterina now ran it with confidence and compassion, mentoring staff, guiding women, and transforming the lives of those who had once been broken. And in doing so, she continued to heal herself. "Coffee's ready," Ekaterina called, her voice light, teasing, the joy of living fully reflected in every movement. Nevestri stood, crossing the space between them in a few strides, capturing Ekaterina in a warm embrace. "You've done incredible things," she whispered into her hair. "I'm proud of you. All of you." Ekaterina tilted her head up, eyes meeting Nevestri's, and in that gaze was every shared nightmare, every whispered fear, every tear shed in private and in therapy sessions. "We did it together," she said softly. "All of it." They moved through their morning in quiet harmony, laughter spilling over small jokes, shared smiles over little triumphs, and fingers brushing with the intimacy of souls that had been tested and proven true. Later, on the balcony, the city sprawling beneath them, Ekaterina leaned against Nevestri, the wind catching her hair. She breathed in deep, feeling the rhythm of the city, the pulse of life, and the unshakable truth of love reclaimed. "I never thought I could feel this safe, this alive," she admitted. "But you've shown me it's possible." Nevestri kissed her temple, holding her close. "We've rebuilt from nothing. You've faced the ghosts, Ekaterina, and you've conquered them. And every day, we keep choosing each other. That's what matters." Ekaterina laughed softly, a sound full of relief and joy. "Then I choose you. Every day, every moment. Even when it's hard." "And I you," Nevestri replied, pressing a kiss to her lips that lingered like a promise. "Forever." The world outside kept turning, full of chaos, struggles, and uncertainty, but inside their penthouse, there was a sanctuary built from courage, love, and trust. The Alcaraz name had been redeemed, not by money or power, but by the hearts of two women who refused to let the past define them. Ekaterina had wings now, and Nevestri was the steady ground she could always return to. Together, they were unstoppable. Together, they had built a life where healing was possible, love was abundant, and hope was never optional. As they stood there, Wrapped in each other's arms, the sun rising over Valencia like a benediction, they knew this was only the beginning. The past had shaped them, but it did not bind them. The future was theirs to claim, and they would do it hand in hand, heart to heart, fearless and unbroken. And for the first time, the ghosts were truly silent. Thank you so much for listening. Please subscribe and like this video and follow me for more stories. You are always welcome here, and leave me a comment or a thumbs up, just letting me know if you like the story and would like more, or is there perhaps an idea that you would like to share or let me write for you.